Welcome everyone to tonight's evening. We'll be celebrating menswear, a wonderful discussion, lively panelists. My name is Patricia Mears and I'm Deputy Director for the Museum at MFIT. And we're thrilled to welcome four wonderful gentlemen in the field of menswear. We're going to begin with Bruce Boyer, but before I launch into the introductions, I just wanted to let you know they'll be in conversation for about 40 minutes. Then my colleagues, led by Tanya Melendez, will be passing out cards to those of you that have questions. Please write down your questions. They will be given to Bruce, and he will go through them and answer as best he can. And then at the conclusion, we'll have a book signing. And we also welcome you to come up and engage in conversation if you didn't get a chance to ask your question in the more sort of round format. We want to welcome Bruce and thank him for joining us tonight. His latest publication, True Style, is yet the most recent in a long line of brilliant works that he's done. Many consider him, I certainly do, one of the world's leading menswear specialists, and we're thrilled and honored to have him here. Bruce is also a member of the FIT family. He worked as a consultant on the 2012 exhibition Ivy Style. Our other consultant, Richard Press, is joining us here tonight. And Bruce was also the co-curator of the exhibition in 2014, Elegance in an Age of Crisis, Fashions of the 1930s. Bruce is joined by Mark Cho. He's really the globe-trotting menswear purveyor. He owns the Armoury, the leading menswear store in Hong Kong, as well as having a branch here in New York. And Mark is also the owner of Drake's of London. We also want to welcome for the first time Stephen Pulverant, a leading journalist. He's written on many areas of menswear and technology, and this intersection of luxury and this materials in the digital age are his specialty. He is the executive digital editor at Surface Magazine. And last but certainly not least is the designer Michael Bastian, who designs under his eponymous label. Prior to opening his firm and really becoming one of the leading designers of luxury menswear, he was the head of menswear, men's fashion director at Bergdorf Goodman. So please join me in welcoming tonight's panelists.
First of all, are these on? Yeah? Okay, good. My incompetence with technology is internationally renowned. So also those lights are so bright. Anyway, thank you so much for coming. Very good of you to come out this evening. And I also want to thank my participants. I feel like I'm in such wonderful company, and I understand that we have some questions later, so you'll all have a chance. I have some questions of my own that I'm hoping that these gentlemen will be able to help me with. I've got a couple of things on my mind that I want to ask them about, and we've got such a lovely full house that I sure hope they've got something interesting to say. Anyway, what's on my mind is internationalism. Because I say this because I've been reading again, and what I've been reading is. I know I should talk about my book, but I've been reading something else. This book by David Marks, Amatora, do you know this book? It's a wonderful book, although between us, I have to tell you, I'm a little pissed off at him because the last couple of weeks he's been beating me out on Amazon. And when I see him, we're going to have a little conversation about that. But, it's a wonderful book. If you're not familiar with it, what it's about, it's the history of the influence of American men's clothing in Japan since 1945. Very interesting story with a great irony, of course, in it, because for years the Japanese were buying our clothing And now, as you probably well know, they're selling it back to us. So there's something of an interesting irony there. But it led me to kind of think about the whole idea of internationalism in style. And I thought, Mark, maybe I could start asking you about this, because Mark has stores in Hong Kong. He's associated with a store in London, and he's got a branch of this famous store, the Armoury, in New York. And what I'm interested in is, you know, do you make any special, do you have any special thoughts when you stock your stores, depending on where they are and the customer, the Asian customer versus the American customer versus the European customer, you know, or are those categories even relevant anymore?
Sure. So I'd like to break that down to two parts of the answer. So firstly, I just want to talk a little bit about what the Armoury is and how it fits in with the way you're talking about internationalism. You know, when we started, we felt like we live in a world today where, you know, men's stores don't need to be predominantly English or predominantly Italian. And traditionally, if you had a men's store, it would just go down one of those two routes. You know, we live in a society today that's far more globalized. People have greater access to things just anywhere around the world. And at the same time, I've always had a great passion for classic clothing, you know, as a way to provide a framework for how to dress. So suits, shirts, ties, jackets. There are so many countries out there actually making classic clothing in their own way and to their own local flavor. And so I wanted to see if I could bring all of that into one entity. So that's how I approached internationalism with the Armoury. And actually, you know, because I work with Drake's very closely as well, Drake's is in many ways the antithesis of the Armoury, because Drake's is a completely English brand where I don't get involved in any aspect of product development, and it's all Michael Hill, who is as much a kind of British fashion thoroughbred as there could possibly be. So on the one hand, we have the Armoury, which is very international. On the other hand, we have Drake's, which is very British. In terms of how customers react to that, I think today, you know, customers love to be able to see things and get different perspectives from products from all over the world. That definitely appeals in a very broad way. But at the same time, there are definitely local differences in terms of what customers are buying, what they like, what they gravitate towards.
Stephen, you are in touch with the market internationally. How do you view that?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that in kind of two ways. I think I can speak to it as a journalist who's kind of like trying to stay on top of these things and try to understand these things. And then first, though, I'll actually speak to it as a customer of Mark's. I mean, as somebody who shops at the Armoury and comes at it from that side, I find that internationalism really appealing. And I think what you touched on about men's stores not needing to be either English or Italian, or I guess we could say American as a potential third category there, but rather kind of providing a sampling and allowing people to kind of pick and choose what they like from across those different cultures. So while you might still want a sort of looser fitting, breezier Southern Italian suit, you might like a sharper, more structured English shoe, and to not have to go find those in separate places, but to have a place where that kind of mixing and matching is encouraged. I think it's something people don't just want, they kind of expect it at this point. And then as far as the international market goes, I think there are variations between markets. I mean, I travel a reasonable amount for my job. And something that always shocks me is if you go to London, everyone is in a Navy suit if you go into the city, still, in a way that in Midtown Manhattan is not the case anymore. And if you go to Hong Kong, you have another flavor of dressing. And it's really, there are still, I think, sort of social norms that aren't they're not really sort of conscious fashion choices, they're just the social norms for how people get dressed in the morning. And so whether you're trying to, kind of curate higher end, more thoughtful clothing, or whether you're just stocking a sort of standard mid-priced department store, I think you have to take those things into account, or you're going to be left with a lot of sale merchandise left at the end of the season.
Okay. Michael, I'd be interested in your feelings about this too, but I wanted to take it in a slightly different direction as well. The idea of, does the idea of dressing up or dressing down mean anything anymore? In terms when you design a collection, because I used to think of you as an American designer, right. That you're looking at your clothing, I thought it was American. But is it, and secondly, how do you approach the idea of dressing up and dressing down?
That's a really good question. And when I started our line 10 years ago, it was when this seismic shift was happening in menswear, where guys didn't necessarily have to wear a suit to work anymore. And that was huge for menswear, because most men had their going to work clothes and their weekend clothes or after work clothes. And suddenly, you were able to wear pretty much whatever you wanted to work. And I think they opened up their closet, and they might have had, they might have spent all their time and their money curating their going to work clothes, and their sportswear wasn't really up to speed with their going to work stuff. And suddenly what happened 10 years ago is guys were really reevaluating the sportswear component, and maybe that Gap polo wasn't, going to work with the Keaton jacket. So, what's dressed up and not dressed up anymore? I don't know if those labels make sense really any longer.
Well, exactly. I mean, that. I think if I do say so myself, it's a good question.
Mm-hmm. Dressed up doesn't automatically mean a suit anymore.
Well, let me try to approach this idea from just a slightly different point of view then. The idea of dressing up and dressing down used to imply at least certain rules about that, dressing up or dressing down. Are there any rules anymore about dressing? And as a corollary, which I want you each to answer, are there any style rules that you actually follow? I mean, we give lip service to some things, but are there any style rules that we actually follow?
Well, the thing about rules is the minute you say them, you can think of a way to break them in a cool way. Like, I get asked that a lot. Like, what are the 5 things every guy should own, and what are the 5 rules that no guy should ever do? And the minute it comes out of your mouth, you'll walk out onto the street and see a guy coming down the block wearing that and just rocking the hell out of it, looking amazing. And rules, I don't know, rules, it's like a moral code. I think we all have to have our own rules. That you just can't paint it with such a broad brush any longer, I don't think, without sounding profoundly out of date. No. Like you can't even say a jacket should fit this way, because then there's guys that want it looser, like certain guys that want it a little snugger. It's so personalized at the moment that I'm always very cautious about a rule.
More than a consideration of a particular genre or a style or anything, that it's just very personalized. Is that your feeling, Steve?
Yeah, I think so. And I think if we're going to think of rules, I think more than any specific wear this, wear that, don't wear this, don't wear that, don't combine these things, always combine these things sort of rules, I think there's more approaches that can be good ways of thinking about clothes and good ways of thinking about dressing. And I know we've spoken at great length before about clothes being both extremely important and completely meaningless. And I think always having that kind of double life, I think, in mind is helpful. That, at the end of the day, wearing a bad shirt and tie combo is not
Yeah.
the worst thing in the world. It's
Yeah.
not. It's not a crisis.
You'll get less likes on Instagram.
That's true. That's very true. That's very, very true. Not that I would know
Well,
from experience.
Now that you jumped in here, you sell a lot of suits, and by the way, if you go to his store, you should take 3 credit cards with you because one won't be enough. They're very
And don't
expensive.
ever drink before you go in.
Yeah,
Don't.
and they're very, very expensive and very, very beautiful. Is there a resurgence in interest in tailored clothing? Because I had this theory. Well, it was just an idea, but I wanted to make it sound important, so I called it a theory. That suits were enjoying, particularly with younger guys, a renewed interest, specifically because they didn't have to wear them. Mm-hmm. It was a matter of choice. You wanted to be a little different, a little
That's
hip,
100% true.
right? And it wasn't a uniform. It was a choice that you made. Does that hold true, or?
Yeah, it's
I
actually.
want to put you on the spot if I can.
Actually, I just wanted to add something to what Michael and Stephen was saying, is that, I obviously it helps me sell more stuff, but I love the idea of people having specific clothes for specific occasions. For instance, if you had a black tie event, I think it's correct and it's ideal really to go in a black tie. A black tie is ceremonial dress to a certain extent, but it's fun because you share this experience with all these different people at the same time. It's actually weirdly democratic as a result. And I just like people having specific outfits for specific things. It just elevates the occasion, and it's almost a sign of respect to the other people who are at the occasion with you as well. But that being said, I think that rules are used a lot to bash people over the head with, and it's a good way to make great things very boring and very inaccessible and very irrelevant very quickly. So, the rules are there as a framework. They're there as a little bit of structure and support, but take it where you wish. Michael, you were saying, you see some guys completely breaking the rules. Mm-hmm. If they feel good and they look great and they're not harming anyone, why not, right?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned black tie being somewhat democratic, and I think that's a really interesting way to think about rules, even if they're rules about an elevated state of dress.
Yeah, black tie is a real rule.
Right, and it's a real rule. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Okay.
We've got a rule.
Yeah.
No, that's just common respect. If you're invited to
That's
somewhere
true.
and it says black tie, be a man and wear a black tie.
Despite all of this a business about creative black tie and
Yeah,
all
there's
of
a
that.
time and a
I
place.
know.
You have 364 other days to get creative.
Yeah.
I applaud you, sir. I applaud you. I agree.
I was going to wear black tie tonight, but I wasn't sure it would be appropriate.
We would have loved it. We would have loved it. What I get asked a lot, just because I've been around forever, is how have things changed? And my immediate answer is that it's the internet that's changed everything, social media and so forth. I'm absolutely amazed at the stuff I see being talked about on various blog sites. I mean, some of these guys are so into it that it almost scares me in a way. Some guys are so into the labels and so forth, and they learn all of this from the internet. It's just my feeling is that a lot of the bloggers, they know everything about clothes except how to enjoy them. They're into the labels. But what has the social media, what's the impact on you guys, Michael?
It's huge,
Yeah.
you know, and I think you're right. Like, these guys have finally been able to find each other, no matter what tiny little thing you're interested in. You know, I think maybe there was like one or two snazzy guys in every town in America and every town in the world, and they had no one to really talk to about this or obsess with them over their,
exactly.
double monk straps. And now there's like
They're not
a
isolated
million
anymore.
blogs for them to kind of have a community, and they really like push each other and egg each other on and swap things and sell things to each other. It's kind of crazy. It's like it used to be kind of the way, you know, all guys like sports, and I think now fashion is kind of like a baby version of what sports is to a lot of guys. You know, you have your team, you have your designers that you like, and you pick your style, and you know, you can go as deep into that as you want, like far deeper than I go as a designer. You know,
Exactly.
it's
Yeah, exactly.
these people are really like scientists or something about you know, the craziest thing, like Carozo buttons or
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
double pick stitching or like things I've never even heard of or used.
Do you think it's turned into like an arms race of snazziness?
Yeah, like like who can one up each other? Well, here's the crazy thing. So
I'm calling dibs on that for a headline, by the way.
But okay, if
You heard it
you
here
look
first.
at like Pitti Uomo as the ultimate event in menswear 2 times a year, now you're getting that live stream of images coming out of Pitti, and now everyone's kind of aware that they're all being photographed. So you're getting kind of the best of the best, or at least the ones who care the most and have the means and the access to these clothes to do these amazing things. And I look at those pictures and it's astounding. And here's the thing, everyone in the world is able to see those pictures exactly the same time, no matter where you are in the food chain in fashion. And it's the same with a runway show. Like these pictures, a show of mine is being tweeted before I've even seen the image. I'm behind stage, I don't even know what's happening. So the world is seeing it before I'm able to see it. So the pace is so fast that it's very democratic, let's put it that way. Like everyone has access. Everyone can try to achieve that look at any level. And going back to your first question, are there regional differences? I kind of feel like those are flattening out a little bit, in a way.
Yeah, that I agree. Well, I was thinking that with some of this interest going so deep with the bloggers, it becomes a blood sport more than anything. You know, that these guys, you know, it was funny. I was watching a conversation on one of the blogs, and this guy said, well, you know, I just bought this great pair of Edward Green shoes. You know, he was using the name. It's a expensive shoe. And he said, yeah, I just got this pair of Edward Green shoes. And then somebody else said, yeah, what model? Right? You know, said, make sure he got the right model. And then somebody went even further and said, which last? Wow.
No, and the amazing thing is, no matter where you live, you can get that stuff. You can get it and have it shipped to you, so you don't need to be in a major city.
Yeah, and even if you're not purchasing it, just having access to see that stuff and learn about that stuff. I mean, I'm in kind of a weird spot to answer this question, since I really came of age in terms of learning about clothing as the kind of hashtag menswear thing really kicked off. And the craziest thing is some of those guys who, when I was sitting in my college dorm room in St. Louis, Missouri, I was talking to these guys on Twitter and Tumblr when Tumblr was everything. I mean, you lived and died by what was on Tumblr. These guys, some of them are now my closest friends here in the city, and we see each other all the time, and some of them have completely disappeared off the face of the planet. It's amazing how it went from being, you know, this giant community to kind of then separating out into a bunch of smaller communities, some of them in real life, some of them still only on the internet. But I mean, I first got a taste of classic clothing when I was studying abroad in London, where access is incredible. I was living 10 minutes from Savile Row. I was fortunate enough to be introduced to some very nice people and to go learn about tailoring by sitting in the basement of Anderson and Shepherd and helping them like sort cloth all day and like getting to watch things. And it's like, that's a pretty amazing way to get to learn. And then you go back to St. Louis and that access is all of a sudden much, much smaller. And to have the ability to learn, not just through reading other people on the internet, but through writing and learning through trial by error. It's a strange way to learn about something like clothing. It almost feels like learning a skill, but it's not a skill, I think, in some ways.
Well, I guess what I was thinking about too is, and it was something that you just said, Michael, that you can order something and it comes right to you. You know, it's interesting to think that, you know, at 3 o'clock in the morning you can be home in your pajamas and you can go shopping in Paris. You know, you can go to Harrods if you want to, and so you have a full online store. Is that
I'm pretty sure Michael has probably a much bigger one than me.
well?
Oh, God, no. No,
Well,
we're very small.
What I'm wondering is that a big part of your business? Do people?
Yeah, what's interesting about online retail for us, because what we do is typically tailoring, it's very high touch, like ideally you should have someone who can fit you and do all the bits properly, is that retail and online actually have work in tandem. You know, there's a lot of people who are visiting the city and they will browse the catalog first on the internet, not necessarily buy, and then buy in the store. Or even vice versa, they'll have looked at something, we're happy with it, but want to go home and think about it, and then the online store just kind of completes that transaction for us.
I wanted to shift a minute into something else entirely. I wanted to talk about style today because I started out asking about the internationalism of it all, and what I'm curious about is what in fact constitutes style today. You know, it used to be a lot more obvious to people, I think. Patricia Mears and I did an exhibition a while ago about the 1930s here, Elegance in an Age of Crisis. And in a way, style, because it was class-related almost. You're not supposed to say class in America. We're not supposed to have that idea. But it was class-related, you know. Fashion started at the top and filtered its way down. It didn't start on the street and work its way up the way it did since the 1960s, for example. But style was rather blatant. You knew what it was when you saw it, even if you weren't familiar with the vocabulary and the concepts and whatever else. But what constitutes a stylish person, particularly a stylish man today? No? You want to?
Man, I won't pass, but that's a big question.
Or is the concept even relevant?
I think the concept is relevant. I think there's, this word keeps coming up, democratization or something being democratic. And I think as the pathways of how fashion kind of permeates society have changed, and it's no longer the same rigid class structure, which I think also relates to the emergence of youth culture really in the especially 60s and 70s. I mean, if you think about the 1930s through 50s, I think you'd be hard pressed to name somebody famous under the age of 30. I think if you think about the 50 most famous people on the planet right now, I would bet that over half of them are under 25. And I think the emergence of youth culture has really led to some of this democratization, because just by virtue of the ideal is no longer the wealthy middle-aged man or woman who is landed, or the American equivalent of whatever landed means here. But there's a sense in which there's there's a freeing up of restrictions, which almost, like you said, makes it harder. And I think something else that kind of impinges on this is there is, in some ways, an aggressive casualness that seems to be enforced in a lot of places and in a lot of circles. And that's why something like black tie, for example, can actually be liberating. The idea that you don't have to worry that showing up to an event that you'll either be under or overdressed, right? There's that perfect sweet spot to shoot for, and then one can do sort of stylish, creative things within the formula. It gets hard, I think, to start judging what it means to be stylish or to have your own sort of perspective when the boundaries of that don't exist. There's no kind of canvas to paint on. The canvas is everything.
Well, Michael, do you have a kind of aesthetic ideal for this kind of thing?
How to define style?
Yeah, and what your well-dressed guy, I mean, you...
Bruce, you defined it for me. You have the best quote I've ever read about style, and you said it's not about right or wrong or rules or any of that. It's about being yourself, but on purpose. And I know I just mangled your quote. Is that close? The important part is being yourself on purpose. And I just put it on my Instagram. I really love that quote. And I think the most important part of that quote is on purpose. You know, there's cool people who just are naturally cool. And then there's these people who care and try. And, you know, you don't always want to see the effort, but you try. Yeah. And I will always give credit to someone who tries, you know, who cares enough about it. And that's style in a way. You know, it's saying who's got style. It's like walking down the street, who's cool. You know it when you see it. So it's hard to give one definition, but you came about as close as I've ever heard anyone come.
Well, thank you. Somebody at a book signing somewhere asked me about this. That's why I was thinking about it. And it occurred to me that what a stylish person does is you kind of take what's out there, the fashion that's out there, but you bend it to your own personality.
And that's when it gets really interesting, you know, when you've personalized it. You didn't just rip a page out of GQ and copy that or go on the sartorialist. You made it your own somehow.
All right. Mark, jump in here.
So because this is quite close to what I do every day, I have quite a specific metaphor for what I think style is. You know, I think that style is a language. And actually, I disagree with you a little bit, Stephen. Like, I do think dressing is a skill. Style is a language, it's a visual language, and it's a skill that you can learn. And you might not start being good at it, or you might have some talent for it for day one, but it is something that you can develop and improve at. And I think that the ultimate goal, and this ties into what you said, Bruce, is because it's a language, what you are really looking for is clear communication exactly how you wished it to be, you know, on purpose, so to speak.
Well, what I was getting at, because I think since we're all in the business, we should give a service aspect to this kind of thing. And I'm wondering what advice we would give somebody who wants to learn more about men's clothing, how to buy it, how to wear it. You know, what advice would we give about building a wardrobe, how to buy good value, and how does a guy that we think dresses well relate to fashion and buying clothes? You know.
That's a big question. You know,
I like to ask big questions.
Yeah, right?
I want to ask tough questions too, but you guys are all answering them.
You know, the first step is they've got to care about it. If a guy doesn't care, there's nothing that's going to make him, you know, really get into it. And a lot of guys really don't care about clothes. It's just the reality of it. But if they do care and they're willing to learn, for all my talk about there are no rules and all that, you should at least know the rules before you break them.
Well, it used to be.
There's some fundamentals.
It used to be easy in a way that I remember when I was coming along 300 years ago. Guys would read GQ and Esquire, and there were some fashion icons who were film stars.
No more film star fashion icons.
Yeah. So
is that official? Are we done?
Yeah.
Perfect.
No, but really, honestly, the ones that you might think off the top of your head, oh, they have style. They have a very good stylist. I work with a lot of celebrities. I don't know a single one that buys their own clothes. And sports guys too. They have a lot of style, but there's someone doing the legwork from you. Do you see that too in the store?
I mean, we assist people and we try to guide people, but for me, the ultimate goal, right, is to have that whole process of getting dressed be so effortless to that person. It's so automatic that you're not waking up in the morning trying to look good anymore. You're just waking up in the morning trying to do what you always do, and that's how I hope everyone can eventually be.
But let me get back just to interrupt. But I mean, to get back to my point, if I can get control of this again, where does a person get good information and advice?
Yeah, so
My simple question.
I'll say honestly.
There's a book called True Style. It's available on Amazon.com. It's about $17.99.
Man, I was going to go there, but
waiting.
A little
I almost
bit
had to
sincere.
blatantly ask. Thank you. What a sweet man. No, present company excluded.
No, but
Present company
in all seriousness, though, I mean,
Yes.
Bruce's books, going back to elegance, are they're Bibles essentially. I mean, it's important to be able to look back, I think, and see dressing as a process, and whether that's a process of how dressing has evolved kind of socially over the last, I think we can say 150-ish years is where the kind of like real origins of what we would consider classic dress today kind of start for real. Whether it's understanding that trajectory or kind of being able to have your own trajectory. I mean, I look at clothing that I was really excited to buy and maybe spent a little too much money on or went really out of my way to get, even 3 to 5 years ago, that today I would never wear. And I have no regrets about that. I'm glad I did it. It's you have to kind of like build this journey, and to do that, you have to learn about what is outside of you, and then you have to try things and experiment and see what works. And maybe you buy that pair of purple corduroys that you then take to a bespoke tailor and have them add, side tabs and 2-inch cuffs maybe. But you do it and you figure it out and you learn what works. And then if you're getting clothes made, you find good people and you trust them a little bit, and then you realize that you know better than they do what's right for you, and you learn that and you evolve it over time. And I think the process of kind of learning about what's outside of you and then learning what works for you is really important. And it's a journey that never stops, which I think is why clothing continues to be fun. I think if I really ever woke up and looked in my closet and was like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I want and I never want anything else ever again, and that stayed that way for 20 years, I think it would be dreadfully boring.
Okay. Well, one thing I was thinking about in that regard was, it seemed to me that at one time there were these public icons that it was very easy to relate to and understand what they were doing, and there were magazines. Now there are so many other things. I think there's some very good blogs around. The problem with the internet that I think too many people don't realize is that the information is completely unfiltered, and you really don't know what you're getting. there's a lot of terrible advice as well as a lot of good advice. But talking about magazines, I want to throw a couple of quick questions at you, and eventually we want to get around to some questions from you. But just quickly, what's the best men's fashion magazine?
I think GQ.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the obvious answer, but who's doing it better?
Okay.
Yeah, thinking maybe a little more niche, I think The Rake is still doing something pretty special and different. It's maybe getting a little long in the tooth, but it's, I think, doing something that nobody else was doing.
I have to remain diplomatic, so Free and Easy, because it also shut down 2 months ago.
Yes, we're only existent magazines, though. Well, I've been saying this for quite a while now, that I'm a big fan of the Japanese fashion magazines. I think they're just wonderful, and in fact, I think, well, I shouldn't say this, you could probably get arrested, but they're better than our magazines. They're really wonderful. Anyway, another quick answer. The best fashion film. Looking at, I'll tell you what I think. There's a wonderful movie made a couple of years ago with Vanessa Redgrave and is it James Fox? I think called A Month by the Lake. Wow, fashions in there are just wonderful. So, do you have a favorite fashion film that you think is incredibly stylish?
Are we talking classic or contemporary?
Anything. I'm just curious.
The Thin Man films are incredible, unbelievable.
Okay. All right. And for a minute, I thought I was looking at an oil painting. Nothing was moving.
I only have facetious answers. I'm an idiot. I watch cartoons all day, okay? I don't have any films.
All right. How about your own personal fashion icon? I mean, who is a stylish guy for you guys?
I've got one.
Yeah,
and
good.
I say it all the time whenever anyone asks me this, but JFK Jr. had such great American style. It was really the first one that was kind of mixing up tailored with sportswear and weird little accessories like a hand knit hat and sneakers with a suit. And I feel like he doesn't get the amount of credit he should get for being the first to do a lot of things. And how I was saying, like, I really don't feel they're celebrity icons as far as their personal style goes. He really, that was his personal style. He bought his own clothes. He put them together himself. And, I feel like we really lost a good one with him. Good. Mark?
Probably Antonio Liverano. I mean, one of the tailors I work with, one of the greats in the tailoring world.
Great.
And
Florentine Taylor.
yeah. He was a huge impact on my own development and on the development of the shop. But when he wore things, it was always natural. It was always clearly something only Antonio could wear. And also, there was always something there that was both predictable and unpredictable at the same time. It was new as him, but you would be like, wow, I would have never guessed that. And when you see stuff like that, you're just like, wow, that is a type of sensitivity and choice and taste that maybe I'll just never ever get to. And you have to. I really admire that sort of skill or that sort of talent.
Steve.
I'm gonna go. It's a little bit of a cliched answer, but I'm gonna go with Guy Talese. I think the sense of occasion and playfulness and having fun with his clothes is something I really admire, even if the specific clothing isn't always to my taste. But I think he's someone who has a good sense of dressing about him.
Yes, I had read somewhere that he said, even when he's just at home writing at his typewriter, if he still uses one, or a computer, that he puts on a suit and tie. His explanation was that it put him in a special mood. That's kind of interesting, I think. Anyway, well.
Wait, Bruce, for you though, who would it be for you?
You know, it's hard for me. There are a number of Italian guys that I think are incomparable dressers. Luciano Barbera, Francesco Barbera's Canonico is a wonderful dresser. Mariano Rubinacci, I think, is a great dresser. The problem is that I'm at the point where I tend to see only people in the fashion industry, you know, and it's, you know, it becomes kind of, what's the word in English? Mayortic? You know, incestuous, kind of, you know. On the other hand, my real heroes, because I'm very much imprisoned in the taste of my youth, my style hasn't really changed in 172 years. That when I think of guys who dressed well, I think of my uncles or kids who were a little older than me that I thought were just absolute lions, you know. I grew up in the age when black leather motorcycle jackets and engineer boots were not a fashion statement. They were what people wore, guys wore. And I thought those guys were just lions. I mean, I idolized that kind of thing. But, you know, so I could mention names, but I mean, it wouldn't mean anything to anybody. So I do have a hard time. People, particularly people over 40, say to me, you know, who do you think on TV is well dressed? Well, I say, you know, gee, could I go home for about a week and think about it, and then maybe I can come up with somebody. Anyway, let me get to some of these wonderful questions from the audience. Are brick and mortar stores becoming obsolete with the spread of digital online shopping? Mark, you have a number of brick and mortar stores.
I love chasing terrible ideas, so I own brick and mortar stores. No, there's something about an experience that you can only have in a brick and mortar store that you can never get online, you know, and I think that environment is very important as part of the process of buying something. You know, like Ogilvy was famous for saying something along the lines of, it's not just the quality of the product, it's how you influence the thinking of the person to change his perception of the product, right? And I used to think that was kind of fake, but actually more and more, especially given how much time I spend in my stores, how much effort I spend trying to like make it a comfortable environment, I do believe that now. You know, I think there's nothing like going into a store, especially stores like mine, where I really try to make it feel like my own living room, you know, and feel that hospitality and feel kind of where these products are actually coming from. It's a very personal experience for me, and it's almost the way I interact with other people, because I'm very poor at talking to people. I just like interact through products and transactions.
So the answer is no.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to direct this next one at you two guys. Given the current informality, and we're putting that word in quotation marks, given the current informality in modern society where it's acceptable to wear jeans and a t-shirt to the opera, you can see where this is going. What do you think is the point at which one is overdressed when the bar is so low?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in as somebody who's in my, late 20s and owns too much tailored clothing for somebody in their late 20s. But I think it's you can dress for yourself, but you are also dressing for other people. And anybody who pretends otherwise is completely lying. I think that's a truism. I won't say a rule, but I think it's true. Dressing is a social activity. And while I wouldn't recommend you wear jeans and a t-shirt to the opera. Likewise, I wouldn't recommend wearing black tie to your corner dive bar or putting on a smoking jacket to go get your bacon, egg, and cheese at the bodega on a Saturday morning. It's not, we've talked about dressing being a conversation and style being language. You don't want to whisper when you need to shout, and you also don't want to walk into a room shouting in a foreign language when somebody's expecting a calm conversation. It's not polite, it's strange, it's not sort of good social behavior. So I think, it's not really giving a hard answer to the question, but I think it's important to consider things. And there's definitely an enforced casualness some places. I mean, I went and had lunch a few weeks ago with somebody at Soho House. And Soho House has a no ties policy. They will ask you to take your tie off at the door. And they literally won't let you in the building wearing a tie. And I've seen this happen before, and I had forgotten about it. And it's like there's something really upsetting about walking into a building and having somebody tell you to put on to take off your tie in a way that I actually don't find it upsetting when you go to, let's say, 21 and you're asked to please put on a jacket. For some reason, being asked to dress up sort of feels like you maybe missed the boat, but now it's an occasion. Being asked to dress down feels almost like you misunderstood, like you screwed up. Yeah.
Well, that was a nice soft answer. Let me just jump in, because I have something for Michael, but let me give a hard answer to that question. I cannot get it out of my mind that it shows an incredible disrespect to a performer who has given his whole life to ballet, opera, jazz, whatever it is, and you don't care enough to dress decently when you go and see him. Wearing an old t-shirt or something when this person has given his life to present something beautiful to you. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I apologize. Anyway. Thank you. Got a couple of people with me.
It's the right room.
Yeah. Okay, Michael. Because you make tailored clothing as well as non-tailored clothing. Where do you think the men's suit business is in the slim fit cycle in the USA? And is double-breasted the new best thing? Well, two of us are wearing double-breasted, so we're split on that, I guess. But anyway.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting question, because what I've realized in this business is the men's wheel turns so slowly that the most advanced guy overlaps the least advanced guy. And I'm going to use pleated pants as an example. We've made pleated pants in the collection for the last 4 or 5 seasons. The stores don't buy them. You see them in the magazine, but I'm not seeing a huge wave of pleated pants out on the street, unless you just never gave up your pleated pants in the 80s, So menswear.
It could happen.
But menswear it's unlike women's, which can change, twice a year. Men's move so slowly. So the whole double-breasted, single-breasted, I just think it's nice to have these options, and certain things look fresh again. And I think a DB is a good example of something that looks fresh again. But you know what I'm saying? Like you're never fully in and you're never fully out, because it just goes so slowly.
Okay. Was that
It's
a
kind of a nice
definitive
aspect of
answer,
it
or
too, right?
did you want to?
It's nice that it's
Right.
never in and it's never out. That's the
it-
beauty of men's clothing. It's
Exactly,
never in, it's
so you
never
can
out.
be yourself. You pick what you like and you can stick with it, and you're either like so far ahead, or if you're so far behind, you give the impression of being so far ahead.
Okay. Well, here I think is a real service-oriented question, and it's something that I think we should address ourselves too. What should a young man on a limited budget wear? He travels, he meets clients, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is an important question. Whenever I'm asked this question, I invariably, it's kind of a cliche, but I invariably go to a blazer. I say a guy just starting out, a good blazer is a wonderful garment to have because you can dress it up, you can dress it down, it travels well and so forth. But what do you guys think?
Navy suit.
No?
Yeah, I'm
You
gonna
wanted
go with
short
Mark.
answers. I'm giving you short answers. Navy suit.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Mark on this navy suit.
Well, I agree with you in the navy blazer, gray flannel pants, a white shirt. Like,
Yeah,
people ask us all the time, what are the 10 things?
yeah.
Like, I have this fantasy of designing a trunk with 10 things and just getting
Yeah.
a guy's size, and for a ton of money, here's all you need. If you have no clothes, I'm going to give you the trunk, and you're set.
Okay, all right. Well, we all noticed the polling booths downstairs, and perhaps this would be a good question to end on. Please comment on the importance and the look of the president's clothing, meaning the current president. What do we think of that? I'm going to get my 2 cents in very early. I noticed that he's changed his style a great deal in the 8 years since he's been in office. That when he first was running for president, he didn't seem to be that concerned about it. The clothes that he wore seemed a little bit shapeless to me and didn't fit very well and so forth. I think lately he looks damn good. I mean, this is not a political statement. I mean, this is an aesthetic statement. That he's become very, very conscious. I don't know whether it's his taste, whether his wife dresses him, whether he has a dresser. I really don't know. But I think he looks good. He knows what to wear. He knows what photographs well now. But anyway, please jump in.
I think he got so beaten up for those dad jeans that he now is like paying attention
Yes.
more.
Yeah.
But you're right, the fit got better. Not necessarily like what he was wearing, but the fit seems like it got a little better.
Yeah, I would love actually for someone here to please write their senior thesis on the science behind how Ted Cruz's clothes fit so poorly. It's actually like it's impressive, and multiple people have written stories about this, that like the clothes fit so poorly it's confusing, that one can't imagine how he could be physically comfortable or how he could have left a store with these clothes on. It's like he walked outside and found them and put them on. It's really and again, I could make it a political statement, I won't, but it's
don't.
miraculous. It's really, really astounding.
Okay. Patricia, is there anything more that you wanted to say?
I just want to let you know it's about 7 o'clock, and I just wanted to thank these gentlemen for the most incredible conversation. They're here to sign books. You can take selfies with them. You can ask them questions. So please come down and introduce yourselves. And again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you, Bruce.
That was good, Don. Thank you.